Greetings, speculators. There's a blog that I like to read on the internet called Mr. Money Mustache. It's written by a guy who decides it's time to quit his job and follow his passion. He believes to be able to quit your job and follow your passions, you need to be financially free. And so he does the calculations of how to become financially free like lots of other books and websites and advocates do. But he doesn't come up with some 60-year-old number by the time you get there, 70, 80 or something. He comes up with about 30, which is kind of my age. He did this about the same age in life that I did. And so one of the spectacular tools that's inspirational to me that he advocates big time in this website is lowering your bills. Treat debt like an emergency. It needs to be paid off. It needs to be got out of your lifestyle. Stop buying stuff on debt. Stop buying things you can't afford. And live a life of freedom without all those bills that you have to support by commuting to a job and selling your time for money. He thinks it's much more creative to use your intellect to create money. And think about what you're doing. Get more creative. Stop spending money. You got to get over that hurdle of fear to be able to say, no, this isn't what I want to do anymore. And move on and become free. And so that kind of freedom is inspirational to me. And so I've followed his path, and I've done that myself. And so my passion is speculating. I've always loved speculating since I can remember. And it used to be in stocks between classes and in high school. It used to be all kinds of things along the way. I'll get into those stories later. But now I'm a father, and I have 2 kids, and I want to teach my kids how to speculate successfully and have fun with it. I want it to be a passion of theirs. I don't know if it ever will be, but I want it to be available to them if they want to. And so recently, Mr. Money Mustache wrote an article on what he's teaching his son about money. And he's teaching his son about an allowance. He gives him a certain amount of money over time. And that when you spend that money's all gone. And it helps teach budgeting. I think that's great. I think that's a great idea. That's a very standard way to do it, about giving your kids allowances. But I think there's more variables in finance than just a steady stream of cash flows that is supported by your parents. And so does he. He takes it to the next level, and he says, okay, kid, invest your money in Bank of Mr. Money Mustache, and I'll pay you a 10% yield on your money. That's a big motivator. Other parents double what their kids can save or come up with. I mean, there's lots of ways to do this. But to me, what's logical to me is corporations. Corporations make sense to me because of taxes. The U.S., where I live, is full of taxes, and there's lots of creative ways to use that tax code to your advantage. And I believe the top 1% of Americans do that to an art form. They don't just give their kids salaries or lumps of money. They use tools to protect that money. And one of the tools they use is a corporation. It ring fences the capital that's in that entity from outside problems, from bankruptcies, from divorce, from lawsuits, medical bills, etc., 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 on and on and on. And the U.S. has lots of things like that are always trying to get a hold of your money or your kids' money. But I believe by putting the kids' money in their own corporations, the kids have more levers to pull when they want money, when they want more of something. I've invested their funds into real estate projects that I believe in, really low dollar houses and rental houses in Detroit. And for small amounts of money that I can give them for birthdays and Christmas, holidays, whatever, they have got more income coming in than I know any other kids their age get paid in allowance, and I'm not paying them along the way. It's money coming from their investments that's compounding over time. They don't really know it's there. They're too young. But over time, I think as that money grows and they want to spend even more than that, I would encourage them and teach them and hope that they invest that money into more investments that grow for them, and pull other levers. Things like, you want to spend the money? Could it be a tax deductible expense where you could spend 20, 30%, maybe even 40% more money than you would if it was just a non-taxable expense, or tax deductible expense, and looking at ways of structuring their business and transactions to be the most efficient ways possible, and thinking about it, talking about it at the dinner table, talking about it around the house, and not making money a taboo issue that should never be talked about because it's scary and people are afraid of it. I think we should talk about it, bring it to the front, and emphasize it. So I want to instill that into my kids. And when they want more money, let's look at new investments. How could we increase your corporation, your business? How could we grow this thing? What other businesses could we add on? Do you really like going to the coffee shop? Maybe whoever's running that coffee shop would like to open another one. Start franchising that thing, and you could bankroll them to open the second one. And not spend your time working there for money like lots of kids do, but spend your intellect of finding the right location and figuring out the market and understanding how that could be a sweet business to own, being run by people that already run a successful one that you know and you love. Ideas like that. It doesn't have to be a coffee shop. Whatever passion that they're into, and businesses that can be built or grown or acquired around their passions, is what I hope to instill into my kids. So I do that on a personal level, and I want to pass that on to my kids. And I love to speculate in companies that do that too. They use corporations to ring fence their assets. In natural resource exploration, which is extremely high risk, they pull all the tricks. And they put one project in one company in some third world country that's owned by another company in a tax haven, like a British Virgin Islands or something. Then that company is owned by a company that's in a publicly listable place like Canada or the UK or Australia, or some place where people trust the markets a lot more and allow you to raise capital as a public company. And so they get multi-layers of sophistication that I'm not going to start my kids on, but maybe later on someday. I would hope that they learn, that they absorb, that they figure out. And I think some of the best, most creative minds at doing that are these penny stocks that I love to speculate on, especially in the natural resource business, because they're mitigating risks in lots of different ways. They take on more risks than most anybody, but when you can reduce the downside to get rid of the downside in those risky propositions and still be around for the upside shots of those things coming through, they can be spectacular investments. So I hope to pass that on to my kids too. I hope I'm not taking too much of your time. Thank you for listening. I'd love to hear about what you've taught your kids, or you're teaching your kids about money, how and why that's beneficial and it makes sense to you. There's a bunch of comment sections below. Just hit those comments up, and I'd love to learn from you, and others I'm sure would love to learn from you guys as well. Thanks for listening.